let's start with these are the people who are going to come out. These are the people that are. This list of people are the people who are either atheist or anti-Christian or anti-religion. So these are the people, and these are the people that come out in the middle of the reading that are somehow it gives a little bit more of a little bit deeper understanding about the reading. I realize that I'm just speaking by myself. All of you are doing phone. It's okay to do phone, but it would be better if at least one person would just listen to me. I just realized that everybody's just doing the phone, and it feels that I'm just speaking by myself. So I would appreciate if you could just listen to me just a little bit more. Maybe you don't understand English, but okay. Adolf Hitler. I think everybody knows who he is. Is a German dictator who's a leader of the Nazi movement, and also the person who's really well known as people who were very anti-Jewish Semitism, and ended up killing a lot of people under his word. So Adolf Hitler was very well known, not just as a dictator, but a person who did a lot of, caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. But he was also known as someone who had a father who was not a good father figure for him. Mao Zedong, you probably, for those who are Chinese, you know him very well. He's also the Chinese leader for many years. He is very influential, probably the most influential Chinese leader in the recent history. And he's also known to have a father who was very stern, very strict. He used to discipline his children with punishment and physical punishment, things like that. So he grew up. He was very well known as a person who grew up under a very strict and stern father. For those who, and the next person is Nietzsche. Nietzsche is probably 여기 계신 분은 다 있어요. 네, 다 저분만 맨 마지막 분만. Okay, Nietzsche is he's also very well known, and you probably heard most of these people. At least sometimes some of these people you may know very well. Nietzsche is known for his philosophy nihilism, which says actually. He emphasized, he's very well known for the sentence of death of God. He was actually grew up in a Christian family. His father was a pastor, but he actually went the other way around. And he was also, he was concerned with the human subject. And also he was also known as basically someone who opened existentialism, philosophy of existentialism, and he is also known as someone whose father was not is always absent. David Hume, also very well known philosopher, Scottish philosopher. 18th century philosopher. He was well known for his work of Age of Enlightenment. He was well known as an atheist. In back then, people were not very popular if you're an atheist. But he was a very outspoken person. That he was an atheist, and he was also founder of some sort of skepticism philosophy. Madeline Marie O'Hare. She was famous for being the founder of the American Atheist Society, which is a group of people that were, very bluntly, they spoke against Christianity, and they were actually atheists. And she was also very well known for supporting the separation of the church and the state. I know that this is something that is today is world we are in that kind of world. Also, she is the one who really influenced the public school not to pray anymore. So she was famous as an atheist, a person who also had a father who's always absent in her life. Bertrand Russell is a British scholar. He's probably one of the most influential British scholar, and he's also he also talked about the analytic philosophy, and he was a logician. He was also a mathematician, and he tried to find everything through logic, through of mathematic some sort of process. Sigmund Freud, he's also well known as one of the, some people call him father of psychology, because he's actually a doctor. He's a neurologist, and he founded he spoke about the person, analyzing the person. He's also the beginner of the psychoanalytic type of process for healing. He's also very well known as the one who came out with the idea of Oedipus complex, leading to his understanding about the id, ego, and superego. Jean-Paul Sartre, he's also he's probably well known as an existentialist philosopher of the 20th century. He's basically his whole philosophy is it's a denial of a creator, saying that existentialism is some sort of a natural process, not about a certain being the creator of the universe. Albert Camus, he's another very famous. I remember reading his book, The Myth of Sisyphus. This is, and he's also well known as the French philosopher about absurdism, which really is very, very negative, very, very pessimistic in their thought about the life. The view of life is everything is absurd. There is nothing actually that makes any meaning. He really believed that there is no meaning in life. There is no meaning in things that we do. And life is absurd. So in the midst of Sisyphus, for example, in his book, he talks about this guy trying to, and his eternal punishment is just bring the large rock to the top of the mountain and bring it down and come back again, and just doing this repeatedly with no meaning. So he views the life as a very negative and absurd, no meaning life. H.G. Wells is also very well-known British writer. One of his books is A Time Machine. He's very well known for the time machine. He is also a person who was kind of a futuristic. He also foresaw the planes, the people riding on the planes. Back then, he foresaw also the sexual revolution, which only occurred in 1960s and 70s. So he saw the future in a way that many people couldn't see it. But his view of life is also a little bit of a pessimistic side. Ludwig Feuerbach is a German philosopher who's also his main thought was he just thought that religion back then in his age, his time, it was a great issue. That he just saw religion as an outward projection of human nature, human inner nature. That human nature we just project to have a religion. This is some sort of a common thing that happened, especially when I was in college. My years of college, people were thinking about just referring the religion as something that is more of a clutch to the weak. People that are weak, that they just find the religion, they just believe. They want to believe in something that is greater than themselves. And these are the actual thoughts. And I'm going to talk about these people more in detail. What kind of influence they made to the world today, and what kind of influence they made to the society, because a lot of these things is really going on right now, and these people are from the 19th century, mostly from 19th century and 20th century people that lived like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. But their philosophy and their influence is still among us. And all of the things that are common among these people is that they had a father who was either absent in their lives, or a father who was extremely stern, or a father that didn't have a loving father type of figure, image. I don't know, and I may ask, what kind of father do you have? Do you have a father who's loving and kind? A father who was caring to you? Or you may not have a father who's so loving, so kind, but a father who's strict and stern and not so forgiving, and many times. And some of us may have a father who's kind of a type of balanced father, who becomes strict and stern at one time, and very disciplinary at one time, but also loving and kind and forgiving at the other time. But what kind of father you have really affects on our lives. We tend to think our father, we tend to think how the life is, the way that we see the view of life is influenced by the way that our parents has, the way that our parents has influenced in our lives. So we like to, so today's subject is really about, we may have a different view of fathers, but let's try to find the image of the father that the Bible provides us as who God is. We call God Father many times traditionally. Some nowadays, some theologians they think that God is it has no sex. It's actually true. So we should call God something mother. And definitely in the Bible there are images of God as a mother. But traditionally traditionally and the whole Bible really is very strong in the image of the God as a father. And I would like to see that side of what kind of image our God has as a father. So, and this is today's reading is regarding the image of God. And if you have a good image of who God is, if you have a good image of who our Father is, may influence in your life, and you may have a little bit more optimistic view of life. I don't know. Yeah, you may have to question that first. But let's read first introduction to the reading today, and I'd like you to focus on two other stories that Luke chapter 15 has. But today's stuff is reading is from Luke, Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. But it has three stories here. And I'd like to just focus first, before we focus on the last story, which is the prodigal son. I'd like to see the other two stories, what they are really about, so we can have a story. This story may be related to other stories. I think it's important. And Luke chapter 15 is known as the chapter about the parables of the lost. I don't know if you have lost something. I think it's really not a good feeling to lose something. If you have lost, I don't know. There was one time that I don't know if you do this, but in my life sometimes I hide things so well that I cannot find it. Have you ever done that in your life? That you hide something that is important to you so well that you don't even remember where you put it, where you hid it, and then you really you get really I get really panicked if you don't find it, if you cannot find it. But many times we have a lot of things that we feel that is valuable, that we lost it. How do you feel about that? If you lose something that is very important. I don't know, in your possession, I don't know if you have something that is so valuable, maybe monetarily, something that is expensive, and if you lose it, let's say for women, I don't know, a diamond ring. Let's say that you lose it. How would you feel about that? I don't know. For me, the most expensive thing besides my house and my car is probably a watch that I received before when I was getting married. My wife bought me a watch, an Omega watch actually. It's very expensive. It's very valuable. Sometimes I wear it. But if you lose it, for example, something that is so valuable to you, how would you feel about it? And if you have the most expensive thing, most valuable thing in your life, and you lose it, how would you feel about it? This week we had an earthquake, right? I don't know. Did you feel earthquake? I felt like this was like I was in LA for 3 days in Northridge earthquake. I was in the East Coast. And then I came here, that was like 25 years ago. I came here for 3 days from my parents' house. And then I felt the last day I had an earthquake. And that was a terrible experience for me. My sister was living and is still living in Northridge. And the Northridge earthquake, her house was, the walls outside, they came tumbled down, and all the dishes that fell and they broke, all the china, all the expensive things that broke, and you lost a lot of things. And then this earthquake, I saw two teenage girls having an interview in a news, and they lost her house. Their house was a trailer house, it's not a mobile house. And it got burned because, the gas pipes when they break and it can cause a fire. And they lost everything they had, all of their possessions. I was thinking about, wow, if earthquake happens in LA, that was like 120 miles from here, Ridgecrest. But if it happens in LA, in that something that is bigger, even bigger than 7.1, what would happen if your house gets burned down? What would you take with you? I was thinking about all those things, and maybe I should just put into places what is important to you first. I know that today it's a digital era, that we have everything in digital form, that our pictures are in digital form, so they're all computerized. And I don't know, you may have put in your iCloud or Google Cloud, Google Drive or something that is safe even though it burns down. But for those people who are a little bit older, we have older pictures that you don't, it's before the digital time. And I was thinking about if I lost all those things, like important pictures, your wedding pictures and things like that, you'd be very upset, right? Losing something is very upsetting. Losing something really gives us panic. Losing something causes a lot of pain. And I think that this is important for us to remind that this story is about someone who's losing something. And let's just read this first. And then we're going to read the last one, which is losing a son, actually, which is, I think, for many people, losing a child, losing, thinking that a child is dead or gone, or losing it is great pain. Do you have extra reading? This is extra reading. Does everybody has extra reading? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's do the extra reading first, then, and I'll just grab one of this, and then we'll do the main reading. Once again, this extra reading is from this book, The Message, which is a paraphrase of a Bible. It's a Bible in human language, Eugene Peterson's language, and it has his own interpretation, but I think it has some meaning to us. So let's try to read, you see the chapter 15 here, in the bottom of the page. We'll read this. The first story is about the story of the lost sheep, about this person who has 100 sheep and loses. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't get that one. Okay, so let's just read this first part. And the second part and the third part we'll just skip because we are going to see in our reading, main reading, it's going to be there. So, story of the lost sheep. By this time, a lot of men and women of doubtful reputation were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. The Pharisees and the religion scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled, "He takes in sinners and eats meals with them," treating them like old friends. Their grumbling triggered this story. Suppose one of you had 100 sheep and lost one. Wouldn't you leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the lost one until you found it? When found, you can be sure you would put it across your shoulders, rejoicing, and when you got home, call in your friends and neighbors, saying, "Celebrate with me, I found my lost sheep." Count on it, and there is more joy in heaven over one sinner's rescued life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. So he's talking about 100 sheep. 100 sheep meaning 100 people, right? Good people, people that are well. Their life is well, and there is nothing of their need. So these are the 100 people, and there are 100 sheep. If this shepherd lost one of them, it's gone, it's somewhere else, would you not just leave the other 99 and go look for that? I think this is true for a lot of parents. I think parents, I don't know. I grew up in a family of 4 siblings. I'm the oldest one. I have 1 sister, 2 brothers. My parents always said, this is a common Korean saying, if you have 10 fingers and if you bite one of them, it hurts. But if all 10 of them are important. If one of them is hurt, it hurts the whole body. Which really does make sense. But they're trying to say that all children are important. If one of them is somewhere else, lost or doing something badly, their concern is for them. I think it's very true that when when you have a lot of siblings, when you have a lot of brothers and sisters, if one of them is not doing well, the whole family is very concerned. Parents also, the heart is always, on those people who are not doing so well. So I think it's very true that if someone is even though there are 100, if one person is lost somewhere, your heart is for them. You end up looking for this person. I think it's very true. In terms of value also, I don't know how much money you have, but let's say that if you have $1 million, wouldn't you be mad still, even though you're rich and you have a lot of money? Wouldn't you be upset if $10,000 is lost somewhere? Let's say that you lost somewhere, even though if you're a millionaire and you have $1 million in your bank, wouldn't you be very upset if someone stole you $10,000? Let's say that you have someone who's a little bit less rich. Let's say that you have about $100,000 in your bank. Wouldn't you still be upset if $1,000 is gone, left? I think it's very true to everyone. You would be upset. Even though it's 1 out of 100, you will be upset. Second story is a story of the lost coin, which is on 188. Or imagine a woman who has 10 coins and loses one. We're talking about it now. 10 coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and scour the house, looking in every nook and cranny until she finds it? And when she finds it, you can be sure she'll call her friends and neighbors. Celebrate with me. I found my lost coin. Count on it. That's the kind of party God's angels throw every time one lost soul turns to God. This is another story of 10 coins, but obviously this one coin is very valuable. You are throwing a party just for this one coin when you find this one coin. Let's say that this coin is, we're not talking about a coin like a penny, but we're talking about coins that is worth of many dollars. So if you find this one lost thing, you end up even spending some money because you're so happy that you found it. The last story is about the story of the lost son, which we will read in the midst of our reading today, the main reading. So I'm gonna go start reading this. If you need to go to the restroom or something, you may do it now. Before we do, so I'm just gonna take a minute beer break if you need it. But before we go through this, you may go now. So when I'm talking about, you may go if you need to. restaurant. So these are people that are gonna come out in the reading. This last one is a concept. It's a Jewish ceremony that we're gonna go see in the midst of reading. So if you have a better understanding of who these people are, you understand the story a little bit better. So this third story is about the prodigal son. Probably you heard about this story. About last week I said, there are two stories that Jesus tells about two sons, right? The first son and the second son. And this is another story about the first son and the second son. The first son is actually the last week's story. The first son is the good guy, which looked like a bad guy actually in the beginning. Second son was the good guy in terms of looking. He looked like he was a good guy, and at the end ended up disobeying his father. This is a story of exactly opposite. The first son and the second son look like a bad guy, and he did bad, but he came back to his father. The first son, who looked like a really good guy, actually ended up not understanding his father's heart. So this is the story of the prodigal son. So let's start reading. Nothing but God's grace, we walk upon it and breathe it, and we live and die by it. It makes the nails and axles of the universe. Robert Louis Stevenson. Second quotation, a simple word of reading, an offer of a cup of coffee on me, a smile and a hug will all go a long way toward reconciliation. A listening ear can open a wondering heart to the thought that God still loves them, and there just might be a place still set for them at the Father's table. Kathleen Walden. Okay, let's start the reading. Legends tells of a man who had a wild and reckless son. The young man became friends with the hooligans of the town and was eventually persuaded to join them in robbing his very own father's house. After the burglary was over, his friends made a fast getaway with the loot, leaving him to be caught by the authorities. He was left to face the guilt of the crime alone. So this is a story of a son who robbed his own house, his father's house, because he was hanging around with the wrong crowd. But his friends just left with all they had. But he was caught there. He was caught in his own house, and he was left alone. The young man was distraught. He not only betrayed the trust and love of his father, but he had also brought public dishonor to the family name. In a culture in which family honor is highest good, this was the worst wrong of all. Desperate and deeply repentant, he went to his father begging for forgiveness. Graciously, it was granted. So this guy was, I did wrong. He went to his father and asked for forgiveness. But this society is a society that honors, values honor. Okay, and his father says, "Okay, I forgive you." The father called on all the extended family members to celebrate the return of his son. Everyone enjoyed a grand banquet. Near the end of the celebration, the father stood and lifted his cup of rice wine for a toast. You know what rice wine is, right? Like sake, right? So probably, this culture is either, like an Asian culture where honor is very important. I think everyone here, 100% is all Asian here in this class. We Asians, we have a great value for honor. Honor is a very important thing to us, right? So his father said, "Okay, my son has returned. I'm going to open a banquet. What I celebrate. He calls his friends. And he made a toast with the wine. The son drank deeply of his cup, but then suddenly grabbed his throat and fell dead across the table. The son had bee poison. So his father actually put a poison in the drink and gave him. And then he drank it. He thought it was a party, but he drank it and he died right there. So his father was like, okay, you did that to our family name, so I'm going to kill you. But the son didn't know, right? The father, with ceremonial dignity, nodded to the guest. Each returned the gesture by politely bowing to the father as they silently left the dinner hall. So everybody was leaving, but it was bowing, right? All was now put right. So everything is right because of the justice, right? The son had paid the price of his pardon with poison, right? Son died, and he paid the price for his crime. His honor had been restored. So the honor has been restored. The family integrity and public name was returned. The whole unfortunate incident was now closed. So now no more. The son who was rebellious, he put a bad name to his family by robbing his own father. He asked for forgiveness, but his father said, okay, I'll forgive you. Open the banquet, but actually he ended up killing the own son for the sake of honor. So this is a story of, I don't know if this really happened or not, but this is a story of a perfect example of a culture where honor is everything. I don't know if you grew up in that culture. I grew up in that culture. Probably you did also, because we're all Asians. Where honor is very important. You know, you don't mess up with the name of your family and honor of your family. And the way that you pay the price for all the wrongdoing is punishment, and justice is very important. When you do something wrong, then you need to be there should be a justice to you. This is additional writing. Oh, reading. Sorry. Okay. Second, the power of the right kind of father. So we're talking about the right kind of father now. That is certainly one way that a father could respond. Jesus gives us a completely different picture of how God the Father relates to his children. It is one of his most famous stories. It also features a wild and reckless son, but that's where the two stories part ways. So we're talking about a different kind of story. The story of the prodigal son has a different turn. It has a different ending and conclusion. There was a man who had two sons. There was additional reading. You can get a copy later. Okay? Okay. There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. So this son comes to his father. "Oh, you're too old. You're about to die. But before you die, I want to get a little bit of my inheritance." Okay. So he gets his part. Not alone his portion. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off to a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. So this is a story of a son who takes all the money that his father has given to him as his portion of the inheritance. He goes to a far away, a foreign country. We are all probably immigrant here in the United States. It's the same situation. We go to another place and spends all the money, but not in the good things. He spends all his money in pleasure, in things of this world, and but the famine came and struck to that country. So it's like there was a pandemic. economic crisis into that country, and everybody was going through difficulties. If you didn't have any money left, you probably become homeless, just like this person. And he ends up going to a farm of pigs, and he asked for to serve as one of the servants for the farmer, and try to eat the food that the pigs would eat. 139. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." So he got up and went to his father. So when he was eating the pig's food, and he was like, oh, not happy, and he was going, even that, he was going hungry, and he said, and he started to think about his father's house. Wow, it was a good life back then. We had food and comfort, and even the servants of my father's house, they'll have food, abundance of food. So he said, okay, I'm gonna go back to my father and say, oh, Father, I have dishonored you. Please take me as one of your servants, not as your son. And probably, just help me to live as one of your servants. So this guy went through a lot of pain experience, of really bad experience about life. And he's going back to his father's house, not to claim that he's a son, but as a servant. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against you, against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. So he said, I am no longer your son. You can take me as a servant. But the father said to his servant, quick, bring the best robe out and put it on him. Put a ring in his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. So this is a story of a lost son. We may all have experiences like that. How many of you are are parent here in this class? I think not many of you, but I'm a parent. My daughter is 16 years old. As a parent, you want the best thing for your children. But when something is lost, when this child goes away from you, when this child does the rebellious thing, when this child does the things that doesn't please you, and you know that this child's life is not going well, you're living a life of damaging yourself and your life. Oh, that's very painful. I cannot imagine. Thank God my daughter is a very, very nice teenager. She doesn't cause any problem. But I cannot imagine, because I have friends who have their children doing wrong things. Oh, and then they go crazy. Life is so miserable because their children is not just doing the right things in their life, and they're destroying their own lives. I know I have a friend whose son is doing drugs, and he came to know, and it was just a devastating thing, a feeling to have a son that is doing the wrong things in life and destroying his or her own life. And this is the same thing. His second son, he just takes all the money and goes away and spends all in prostitutes and drinks and things like that in this world, and then he's gone. But he comes back later, so he's very happy. His son is healthy still. Comes back, and he restores his relationship and said, "You're my son, and you are here. You're lost, but you're not found. I thought you're dead, but you're alive, And this is what is important. And you know, when they come to you alive and healthy, and that's all it is matter, right? Okay, a Father who is present and active. Let me just drink something, because my voice is going a little bit dry. Jesus presents the kingdom of God with the image of God as a Father who is present, active, and involved, not absent, passive, and removed. If we don't make that observation, we will not understand the full chain-breaking power of this story. When Jesus came, the most common image he used to refer to God was that of Father. He could have used the imagery of a therapist, life coach, general, Caesar, or CEO, but he chose the word Father. That tells us something. The Bible tells us that no one has seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God and his closest relationship with the Father, and has made him known. So Jesus came with a specific purpose to make God the Father known. He came to make known not just that God exists, but also what he is like. The impact of our Father is staggering, including how it affects our faith formation. Almost every famous atheist had a father who abandoned, abused, or disappointed him or her deeply. And so this is the list that you can see in the board. People that are talking about. These are famous people, right? It was true of Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong, Friedrich Nietzsche, David Hume, Natalie Marie O'Hare, Bertrand Russell, Sigmund Freud, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, H.G. Wells, and Ludwig Feuerbach, just to name a few. So these are the people who are known as the atheist people that did not believe in God, and their philosophy, their thoughts, and their influence was that everything, life is a very pessimistic point of view. That life is not so good, and even Albert Camus, for example, he believed that nothing has meaning in this life. It's an absurd life, that there is no purpose in life. And I think his mind can influence a lot of people. Even in today's, there's a lot of people who are committing suicide. I think that's one of the mind behind that kind of understanding of life. And these are the people who are very heavily influenced. And these are all famous people, and because they're all famous and for their thoughts and their philosophy, they made a great impact in the society, and even today, after these postmodernism thoughts, right now I think it's very influenced by these people, and you may be influenced by these people, but one thing common to them is that they didn't have a figure of father who's good and loving and caring and who's present there, who's forgiving. You may have a father like that. You may not have a father like that. I mean, it's not your fault that you had a father like that if it's not such a good father. You may have a father that may be abusing. I don't know where you are. But what the Bible is trying to say is, your real father might not be the right type of father, but Father God is not that kind of father. Father God, God is a good father, a father who's caring and loving and forgiving, and who is willing to even give himself, even sacrificing. And that's the image that I'd like to really get through this reading today. Psychology professor Paul Vitz showed how this and other all had fathers who were absent or unloving. Our fathers have the power to influence us profoundly for good or evil, sometimes without our even knowing it, not just in our physical DNA, but also in our starting point for our understanding of faith. So I'd like to share just a little bit about my own father. I have a father who's a very stern in some sense, but also a father who's very forgiving and very loving and caring for our family. The image that I have about my own father, he's 84 years old and still alive, we thank God, is a father who cares, and a father, so I have great respect. If someone asks me, who do you respect in your life the most, then I'll say my father, for sure. And it is because of my father is always there for family, and he's a very self-sacrificing type of father, and he made a great impact in my life, and I think I'm a very optimistic person because of his influence in my life. You may have a different father, I don't know. I have friends who had not such a good father, and they are okay with their lives, but for many, many years they struggle a lot with life and the way that they see, and because of the father image. Let's keep on reading. 140, last paragraph. It's important to note that just because a person starts out with the obstacle of an unhelpful father does not mean he or she will not come to know God in a real and personal way. Case in point, apologist and evangelist Josh McDowell, whose father was violently alcoholic, once said in this way, "I grew up believing fathers hurt because my dad hurt me." It was not until later years he was able to separate the disappointment and pain he felt regarding his biological father to see a clear picture of God as our Heavenly Father. It was then that he moved from being an ornery agnostic to a follower of Christ. So Josh McDowell, he didn't have a good image of father because his father was alcoholic and violent, but he changed his view of life after knowing God, meeting God personally in their life. I have many memories of my dad being present, active, and involved in my life while I was growing up, including at family dinners, on vacations, around the house, and at my various sports games. I still remember the time the umpire didn't show up for our Little League baseball game, and my dad ended up filling in. On one of my at-bats, he called me out on a called strike, third strike. Clearly, his eyes must have been going bad at the point in his life. He was a good dad, not perfect. My dad always told me how much he loved me and how proud he was of me, and he never let me become too cool to hug him. Maybe your experience with your dad was like mine, or maybe your experience was different. My wife's dad walked out the door when she was only 1 year old. I recall the lunch where she met him for the first time after more than 33 years of absence. Suffice it to say that Jesus knows that not all dads gives a clear picture of what he means when he calls God Father. The prodigal son parable helps clarify that. When I spend time with my 3 children, I do not ask them if they believe in God. I know that they already do. I ask them where they have seen him active and present in their lives. I'm trying to help them develop the eyes to see that just like the Father is present and active in his story, God is also present and active in their stories. He's like that in my story and yours too. So what he's trying to say is that the author is trying to become the dad who's present all the time. Like I try to be present with my daughter's life, So that they would understand eventually that God is always there for us. Last paragraph, 141. It may be fair to ask if that's a realistic jump. Just because Jesus had a Father so present and active, can we automatically conclude that He meant us to make that connection to our own lives? Absolutely. Remember that the whole point of the parables, they are told by Jesus to be thrown alongside to our own stories. So the parable, the stories that Jesus tells us, is really about our own stories, right? The parables are not just curiosities, they're corrective lenses for our hearts, visions of God the Father and the life within His kingdom. Jesus came to make God the Father known. Using parable is one of the ways He does that. A father scheduled generosity. So let's keep on reading that. Jesus answers, with the Father present in the story, the question becomes, what is He like? Jesus answered this initially by the Father's response to the younger son. The son's asking for his inheritance prematurely is essentially telling his father that he cannot wait for him to die. He wants the money now. This is on her level of entitlement. Can you imagine that if you go to your parents and say, Dad, Mom, give me my inheritance right now. I'm sure that they'll be very, very upset. I'm the oldest guy here in this classroom. I don't do that to my parents because I don't wanna hurt them. Just imagine, Mom and Dad, just give me my inheritance. Oh, they'll be so upset. It's just like, oh, you're old, you're about to die. Just before you die, just give me something, right? It's the same thing. The second son he just asked God, their father, his father, and he asked, give me my inheritance, my portion now. Astonishingly, the father divided the property between his two sons. And Jesus said the first son was due a double portion of the inheritance. So the younger son presumably jets off with a third of the estate. Jesus would not have known which was most scandalous, the son request of the father's or the father's response. Under no obligation to honor this hurtful request, the father still chooses to do as requested. The word prodigal means lavish. As many others have observed, maybe we should call this parable the prodigal father instead of the prodigal son. So the father has a very different way of reacting to this story, this request. In those days, let's say this is the inheritance of the father. So in those days, it was like the first son gets 2/3, so he gets all this, and the second son gets 1/3 only. So this is his portion. So he divides into 3 and gets one of this portion and gives to his son. It's interesting because his father just does that. He doesn't get upset, and he doesn't say, hey, you're insulting me, you're thinking that I'm gonna die or anything like that. He just, okay, you asked, okay, I'll give you the 1/3 of my possession. So the 2/3 is going to his first son. Let's remember that when we come back to the story of the first son. Every day we choose between the two alternatives, living with the Father or using our free will to depart for a distant land. The first option is to do life with God. We stay present to God, who chooses to be present and active with us. We bring every low to Him and celebrate every high with Him. His deepest desire is for us to live at home with Him, trusting that the best is with Him, not away from Him. There's a saying, Korean saying that says, 집 떠나면 고생뿐이라고. I don't know, for those Koreans, you understand that. When you leave your home, there is only suffering, right? everything is actually true, you know. If you live outside, if you go far from parents, right? What do you do when you come home? The first thing that you want to do is experience some home cooking, right? Your mom's cooking, and you want to just take a nap. Even at my age, you know, when I go to my parents' home, well, first thing I like to do is just eat what my mother cooks and take a nap. That's my favorite thing to do at home, my parents' home. I think so, and that's very true. When you live from home, there's only suffering, right? Life in a distant country. This is the story of a distant country. Everyone wants to go out once in their life, right? There's another way to do life, far from the Father. We choose this when we find sin more attractive. Often because our perception of Father is so skewed, we can doubt that his restrictions and guidelines exist because he has our best in mind. We're confronted with this choice not once, but regularly. We can choose what the younger son chooses. As the band Imagine Dragons concludes in his song, whatever it takes, I'm the prodigal son, I was born to run. So this is like this is very true, you know. We want to go away. You know, like your parents are always, you know, nagging you, telling you to do things, and I think it's very true. Every parents, they are constantly like nagging and constantly saying things that for you, right? Oh, do this and do that. Don't be like this, and be careful with these people. In Korean word, there's a word for the 잔소리, right? You are always doing that. You're sick and tired of that. You want to run away, and that's natural. But there's nothing better, even for run away. Of course, life in the distant country is fun at first. Okay, it can be fun, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't not be a temptation. However, eventually the fun departs, but the pain, guilt, and shame remain. We lose an inner sense of freedom. We also lose our outer freedom as our unstrained life choices lead to the carnage of failed friendships, broken finances, and even emotional or physical health problems, depending the choices we made. So if you make a choice of going away and not be healthy, and we lose the friendship. If it's a carnal thing, something that is like ultimately very earthly things, it doesn't lead us to a good life. We can feel anxious, threatened, and paralyzed by fear. Instead of seeking sustained joy, we search for momentary bursts of pleasure. And this is what the world gives you, momentary pleasure. The younger son loses all of his share of the estate. Through his wild living, God will honor our free will even when we go against his will. We are free to choose, but we are not free to select consequences of our choices. Sometimes that truth is learned only the hard way. So we can choose things, right? We can choose a life like this, carnal life, life that is outside of God. But at the end, we will regret because we learn the hard way. Paralleling our own tendencies with those of a younger son, author and theologian Henry Nouwen says. Henry Nouwen is a very well-known Catholic priest. His best known work was The Wounded Healer, right? He is really well known for his books because everybody, he has a life experience that really come closer and make us closer to God. So Henry Nouwen, and he says here, our addictions make us cling to what the world proclaims as a key to self-fulfillment, accumulation of wealth and power, attainment of status and admiration, lavish. These are all things that we look for, right? Accumulation of wealth and power, attainment of status and admiration. We all want to be well respected and rich and well known. Consumption of food and drink and sexual gratification without distinguishing between lust and love. And sometimes we want the sexual gratification, not distinguishing between what is lust and what is love. The addicted life can aptly be designed to a life lived in a distant country. Beneath it all is a great rebellion, the unspoken curse. I wish you were dead. So this is actually a cursed life, but people think it's a good life, right? Now sitting with the pigs, things have hit rock bottom. The Jews consider pigs to be an unclean animal. The pods that the pigs were eating even began to look appealing to the prodigal son. Jesus is teaching us that when we spend enough time away from the Father's house, our appetites adjust. We start to call good what we once thought as gross. So his life was really like a bottom of life. Part of the brilliance of Jesus' stories as way of to teach is that they have power to touch on so many areas of our lives at once. His listeners both then and now are forced to confront where their appetites have adjusted. Spending enough time away from the Father, we too can start to call good what once was believed gross. Life in a distant country is always marked by the moral relativism that pig food is just fine for us these days. Then notice what Jesus says, but no one gave him anything. Jesus is giving us a picture of direct contrast to the Father's generosity. So this is a contrast between a life that is was provided, but boring sometimes, and the life that is exciting, that is earthly pleasure, but at the end it brings to destruction, and your taste of your taste of life changes. You start to think what is not so good before, you start to think it's a good thing, but it's not true. Okay, God's ability to use our pain for our progress. The pain of hunger coupled with his remembering his father's generosity makes the younger son come to his senses. Sometimes we need pain to spiritual breakthrough. So pain is something sometimes is necessary, right? I don't know you, but I experienced a lot of pain in my life. Actually, for my 40-some years, I never experienced any pain. But then the pain came, and I started to know what the real pain is. But the pain is not always so bad. Pain can cause us to grow. I don't know if you have heard the word growing pains. Sometimes you need pain to grow. I think it's very true. If you never have experienced pain, you don't grow that much. If you experience pain, you grow, right? And C.S. Lewis is the second person that we want to acknowledge. Is he's an Oxford scholar. He was in the beginning. He was a very skeptical. He didn't believe in God. He wanted to prove that God is not existent. God is wrong. That we're wrong about the God. So he started to read Bible, and guess what? He started to see the other side. He started to believe in God, and he's probably really well known for his work. There's a lot of books that he wrote: Mere Christianity, Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know if you know the Chronicles of Narnia. That's actually a children's book. I only read it when I grew up already, in my 20s. When I read that book, it's a series of 7 books, but I remember reading those books. It was like I couldn't just stop it reading because it was so good. It was just going on and going on, and it was just a really good book for me. Okay, this is what he says. As a C.S. Lewis, stoutly noted, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciousness, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So he's saying that pain speaks loud and makes us awakens us. Deep souls rarely grow without seasons of pain. All of us have seasons of pain in our lives. If you have not had one of those, just keep living and you will. Maybe you are one of those right now. This very well could be an era of pain through which God wants to work in you. His word promises that His will work in all things, not just the good things, for those who love Him and are called according to His purposes for them. Your painful season is in a relationship with a friend, might be how God teaches you to rely on His presence in greater ways. Or maybe He will teach you how to be a better friend to others. Maybe you have the pain of feeling unfulfilled inside, or a financial debt that is depressing you. It could be pain over sin in your life. So pain can come in a various way, right? Broken relationship with your friend, with your loved one, boyfriend, girlfriend, or you could have pain of a broken even family life. You could have a financial crisis in your life, and that causes a lot of pain to us. You could, have all sort of pains, different pains. Sometimes the addiction to things in this world can be painful too. What will you do when you reach the pain? Will you allow it to become the catalyst for renewed thinking, or will you try to numb it? Let it drive you farther into the distant country. The hunger pains led the son to renewed thinking, which led to the trek back to the father's house. He's going back, hoping for the higher servant's plan. Sure, the son's plan had been fulfilled by his foolishness. So his painful experience of hunger and miserable life, he started to think about his father's house. And then he decided to go back to his father's house. Not as a son, but as a servant. God who runs. Jesus reveals a father who does not give up on his rebellious son. He sees his son a long way off, presumably because he has daily scanned the horizon in hope his son would come to his senses and return. Seeing him, the father runs to his returning son. This is culturally humiliating act. In that day, it was believed that important people do not run to others, others run to them. Right? This is true, right? Important people do not run to other people. They don't have to. Other people come to them, right? If you're an influential person, you don't really need to go to anyone because you have power. But other people come to you because they want your influence, they want your power, a little bit of that, so they come to you. In the first century, if a Jewish son lost his inheritance among the Gentiles and then returned home, the Jewish community would perform a specific ceremony. It is called kezaza and was designed to humiliate the returning son. So this is the kezaza, which is a Jewish ceremony. And this is how the ceremony is, okay? This is how the ceremony is. For the Jewish people, when the rebellious son come back, they do this kind of stuff. Members of the community would break a large pot in front of him and yell, "You are not cut off from your people." And he would totally reject forever. The father is humiliated. The father is running to protect the son from the village. In other words, the father is humiliated so that the son is not. So this is a story of what? Jewish people, when the son returns, what happened? The community come to them, the village people come to them and say, "Okay, we're going to do this ceremony." They put the son and they break a pot and they say, "Now you are, they say, you're cut off from your people. Now you're expelled from these people because you dishonor your family, you dishonor your father. But the father runs to the son. Why? Because before the village people would do this kind of ceremony, the father wanted to protect his own son. So his father is willing to be humiliated so that the son will not be humiliated. Is that the picture you have of God the Father? Because that is the very picture Jesus wants to inject into your life. He's not the father in the opening story who was more concerned about family reputation than the well-being of his son. His father couldn't care less what anyone in the village thinks. In Jesus' parable, all that matters to the father is starving, aching, exhausted son who wished him dead. His undeserved humiliation takes the place of our undeserved humiliation. So this father is a different father. Remember the first father in an Asian culture? He said his son who robs him, and said, but he got caught. And so he said, I'm sorry, father, I have committed a sin. And his father said, okay, I forgive you. And then opens the potty and puts the poison in the drink, and that kills the son, and says, now our family honor is restored. Now, the father in the story of the prodigal son, the father in the Bible, is a very different father. He's saying, okay, I'll be humiliated, and I want to protect you from humiliation. Family honor is no more important than my son's life. My son is aching, is hungry, is broken, and he wants to come back. And my son's life is more important. I think this is important because many times, for the sake of honor, we don't want to acknowledge something, the brokenness of the world. The son did not even have a chance to finish his prepared speech before he was given the good gifts of a robe, a ring, sandals, and celebration. There was no poison at this banquet. The ring was a symbol of authority. The shoes were the mark of being a free man, not a slave. This son had returned from the land where no one would give him anything and come back to the father who was prepared to welcome him with everything. So he put the ring, right? The ring is saying that you are my son. The sandal means that he's not a servant, he's not a slave. Slaves were not given sandals, they're not given shoes in the old days. Why? Because without the shoes, they cannot run away, they cannot go far. So they would not give shoes to the slaves. But he gives sandal to him, right? Okay. And he says, everything is yours. That's God's heart towards you. Whoever you are, wherever you have been, whatever you have done, God is waiting for you to come home. When you do, He will spring to you, embrace you, kiss you, and welcome you. This is the heart of the Father whom Jesus came to make known. We might be tempted to wonder why Father did not just go to the distant land and find the son. At the very least, he could have sent some of his servants to force the younger son to return. But he misses the point that Jesus is giving us. It also shows that Father will not force the son to be in the relationship with him. It must be chosen freely. And so it is with God and us too. The best storytellers know that the art of storytelling means saying no to some possibilities in order to say yes to others. The story takes shape not just by what is included, but by what is intentionally included. Yet the absence of some detail in the parable is not necessarily a theological assertion by Jesus. The parables are prophetic and pastoral. Prophetic because they are designed to get past our defenses, to help us see our lives as they are. Pastoral because they call us to make any needed changes to live the light of the story told. We wrestle with seeing what is there and not getting sidetracked by what is not there. Let's keep on reading. We have only 10 minutes. A distance hard to close at home. Jesus continued the parable, now bringing the older son into the story. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come home, he replied. Your father has killed a fattened cow because he has him back safe and sound. The oldest brother became angry and refused to go in. So the father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I have been slaving for you, and you never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat, so I could celebrate with my friends. But when these sons of yours has squandered your property with prostitutes come home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, his father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours, but you have to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So this is a story also about the first son. And the first son is complaining, oh, I am the right guy. I never went away. I did good to you, and I served you, and then you have never even given a little goat for me to celebrate with my friends. But you were opening this banquet, you killed a cow for the son who spent the money with prostitutes and things like this world. So he's complaining. So the first son even, he has all this, right? But he's not content. He just think about all this, what the other son spent. And he's complaining. Well, his father said, everything here is yours. Everything is left is yours. You just have to think about this. You're talking about your own brother. We're not talking about relationships, and we're not talking about comparing to one another. You're comparing yourself with the second son. But this is not about comparison. Sometimes when we compare things, we get in trouble, right? Like when you compare with others. I drive a Hyundai Sonata. Let's say that one person just passes by and then drives a new Mercedes, and then you look at, oh, what a nice car. And then you start to compare and say, I want that car. And then, sometimes you're driving I drive my Hyundai Sonata, and then you see all beat up like a 30 years car besides you, and then it's all beat up. And then you say, oh, I'm okay. We're constantly comparing with other people what we have. We're constantly comparing with other people what we are. And that's actually not beneficial for us. You just have to be content what you have, right? And this first son, he feels that. You have to think about, focus on this brother of yours is found. Well, if you don't see that, you cannot see the Father's heart. The context for this story gives us a notable insight. When interpreting parables, it is essential to know not only the story, but also the context. Though many lessons are learned through the front part of the parable with the younger son, Jesus actually is focused on the father and the older brother. We know this because what prompts Jesus to tell this parable is the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of law murder, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So the whole story is not about only the second son, but is about the first son, because this is the context, right? The younger brother forces us to consider whether we will live close to the father or in a distant land. The older brother forces us to reflect on whether we've chosen to live close to the father, but our hearts have become hardened toward the mercy of God towards others. If we are not careful, we can end up wanting mercy for ourselves and punishing for others. We want mercy for us, but we want to punish others, right? We want good things in our lives, but we don't want bad things. We want bad things for others, right? So it's like we may not want kazaza for ourselves, but that does not always mean we don't want that to happen to others. We can be lost in a distant land, but we can also be lost at home. The older brother's heart is a million miles away from the father's heart of mercy. The older sons refuse to go in, and so the father goes out seeking him. That is the heart of the father, always looking for his children. Jesus is showing us that whether we have lived widely or coldly, the Father's desire is for us to be united with him. Okay, we're just 5 minutes away, just finishing. Finding yourself in the parable. To find your way forward in your own story, you have to locate yourself within this story. This is how God uses the parable to do his work in our lives. This parable is so multifaceted that we may find ourselves identifying with different people within the story, depending on what part of our stories we reflect upon. Maybe God is using this parable to help you see that your earthly father was not the best picture of your heavenly one. If absence, pain, and disappointment were your experience, I am sorry for that genuinely. Jesus tells this parable in part to make God the Father known. If you have children or hope one day you can break the cycle of pain and be part of God's outworking of redemption by being the kind of parent your parents may not have been to you. Be present, active, involved, generous, and merciful. Maybe you are seeing yourself in the story as a younger son in a far-off country. You picked up this book because you were wondering if Jesus had a down-to-earth story to help spark hope in your life. If so, you can see the Father is ready to run to welcome you home. How does that happen? Through Jesus. He did just come to tell a story. He came to change ours. So this is a really important thing. Jesus is not just telling a story, but he wants to change your story. He wants to change your life. Do not wait another moment. The ring, sandals, the robe, and the celebration are waiting for you. Maybe you are not the prodigal son, but you know one. Perhaps you can't help but think of how your child or friend or other loved one is doing life far from God. You can be encouraged by knowing that their story is not over yet. God is still in the business of welcoming prodigals back home. Of course, this parable may instead cause you to identify with the older brother. Maybe you have grown resentful towards those who have lived widely, only to return to be fully welcomed into the Father's house. Do not live another moment outside of the party. Ask God to make our heart tender again and toward him in his mercy. Ask him to help you. Remember all the times he has been merciful to you as well. What was lost in now is found. What was once dead is now alive again. Such resurrected power has already launched the celebration. The fattened calf is going to be eaten whether we join the party or not. In the parable, the father tells the older son, everything I have is yours. That means the ring, the sandals, the robe, and celebration is waiting for you too, if you are willing.